It's 4:35. Let's get the study session going. In the interest of time, I know everybody's here on their evenings and everything, and I appreciate the fact that you're all here. Good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
So the purpose of our study session is pretty much to go over the agenda for the meetings prior to Tuesday, and hopefully we can get our questions answered. If we have questions on any of the superintendent's recommendations or anything that's in the packets, hopefully we can get our questions answered in this setting so we don't have to bring those questions up on the dais when we're in and have all the public people there. So it's probably the third time we've done this, and I think they've been a little bit more helpful. So we've been able to ask whatever questions the board needs to ask of who's ever requesting a rec. And so I know that they've been looking like an actual meeting, but I don't mean them to look like a meeting because we're just trying to make sure that we get everything, questions answered to whatever the issues may be. The meeting actually happens on Tuesday. So once again, we won't be voting on any of this stuff. We'll just be asking questions. Hopefully you gather enough information to make an educated decision for your vote on Tuesday. So with that, can we get started? Monica, do I need to have roll call?
You can if you'd like.
I'd say, well, all the board members are here. Dr. J is here. So I think we can just do it without roll call. So with that, call to order, roll call, and approval of the agenda are normal things that go on. So I don't think we need to have any discussion about that unless anybody has any questions about that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I do. There have been a number of, I heard what you said about the purpose of study sessions, and that is to review, if I've got it right, the upcoming items for the board meeting. But I also thought that the study sessions were an opportunity for the board to kick around, so to speak, other ideas that we may or may not, at some subsequent time, want to put into a motion. And there are a number of issues that I have called to the chair's attention for inclusion, for discussion at study sessions. And they never appear on the agenda. And so I guess in a way I'm objecting to the agenda both tonight and next Tuesday unless we can amend it. Because the purpose of the agenda is, or the discussion regarding the agenda is to talk about things that are on the agenda that we have questions about, or things that didn't get on the agenda that we would like on the agenda. And I'm just going to point out two of them. One was this goes back to over a month ago on the 1st of March. I requested that we have a full briefing of the board regarding our status with the Office for Civil Rights. And so far, I haven't heard anything about that, and to my knowledge, that has not been put on the agenda. Another item is from 19th of March. I said I had two suggestions for improving the efficiency of the operation of the board, and I wanted to discuss that. I've never seen that brought up.
So what was that? What was that?
From the 19th of March, I suggested two items for making the operation of the board more efficient, and I never received a reply from anybody on that.
That one's on the agenda for Tuesday.
Under
Study session was
Under
95?
study? Okay. And then, and then another one is that, and I saw that I believe we have a part of it, perhaps, in the study session next Tuesday that precedes the regular board meeting, and that is the evaluation or determination of what document, what instrument we will use to evaluate ourselves, the board itself, and the superintendent. Now, what has happened so far is the secretary for the board has provided us with several.
Yes.
Those have been executive session conversations.
Right. That's what.
Yeah.
That's.
I'm just talking about the form itself, not the evaluation, just the instrument. And that can be a totally open conversation. You know, what criteria do we use to evaluate ourselves or the superintendent? And I've seen some of those documents, but the board has never decided what instrument to use. And the reason I keep bringing it up is because it's best practices, it's written policy, and it's just getting sloughed off, pushed off. And one of the things is that before we have an evaluation, an actual evaluation of the superintendent or the board, we need that instrument out there a good 6 months before the evaluation takes place. So the longer we slide and let it go now, that just pushes the evaluation further and further into the future. And so I think that is something that the board is slipping on. So another thing is that I wanted to make a proposal for our literacy program. And you know, it's been up and down and all over the place. And I don't want to take the time right this minute, but I do want the board to talk about it. And we've had a lot of input from the public, but I haven't had a conversation with my colleagues on the board as to where they stand on these things. And I want to have that conversation with my colleagues. So, and I don't really care whether it's an executive session or a public thing. We're not talking about personalities or people, so I don't see why it can't be in the open. But nevertheless, we should have that conversation because we're the ones that set the policies. And we need to have a policy. When I turn to CDE, there's nothing definitive there. When I turn to the Office for Civil Rights, there's nothing definitive there. So it's a bureaucratic swamp out there. And so I think it's imperative that the board sets a policy so that everybody's clear about what we're going to do. And once we get that policy in place, I think it'll be a huge relief to the superintendent and to the staff to understand what we want from them. But right now, it's all over the map. So those are some of the things and I know that a colleague of mine on the board has asked for discussions of some items that go back almost a month, and there's no response. You know, and Mr. Chairman, the last thing I want to mention is that one of the suggestions that I would like to see incorporated into the structure of the agenda is an old business and a new business. And as right under the item business, we should have old business and then followed by new business. Because what happens time and time again, something will come up, we'll have a few comments about it, and then it's just dropped into the void. It's not picked up. And if we had old business, then we could just automatically flag that item for the next meeting's old business, so that we have traction and we continue to address these issues. And I know that several of us on the board have tried to make suggestions and they kind of go nowhere. But if we could say we'd like to refer that to old business for the next board meeting, that gives us continuity as a policy-making entity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we'll take that into consideration. You know, we'll have a conversation about it.
Good.
The attorney's here now.
So-
We can,
oh.
we'll talk with him in executive session, and
Okay.
you can bring those issues up, and we'll have a
Okay.
conversation about it
So,
at that time.
and I don't know whether, I do have a comment that I want to discuss. That, again, it's not personalities, but it's the way I wanted to talk to Mr. Farrow, but with the board, and we can either do it now or in executive session. But my reading of executive session allows more specificity than we give it, and it doesn't always have to be a conditional statement every single time. And my reading of the use of executive session, it says that you have to give 24 hours notice of executive session, but that's only if there are persons involved in the executive session who are not present. Now, when we go into executive session, most of the time, it's just the five of us, perhaps with the council. So if all five of us are here, there's nothing that prevents us from, at the spur of the moment, at the last minute, saying, well, we're gonna go into executive session. That does not violate the 24-hour advance notice rule. It only violates the 24-hour advance notice rule if we go into executive session to talk about somebody who is not able to be here for participation in that executive session. And so, Mr. Farrell, I would like a more detailed response to that, because so many times I'll see that we're gonna have an executive session. I have not a clue as to what the executive session is. Is it something that I wanna talk about? Is it something about a subcontract? Is it something about somebody's employment? I go in there not having any idea what that executive session is about. So I can't prepare and contribute as well as I could if I knew in advance what that topic is. So I really do want to push for more specificity on the use of executive session, rather than just to use a catch-all. You know, say, well, in case we need it, we're putting it in the agenda. I would like, and then if we put it in, that means there will be one. And as I said, I'm saying the same thing over again. You know, when just the five of us go into executive session, there's no reason in the world we can't just say, okay, excuse us, guys, we've got to take 5 minutes to talk about something, and we just go into executive session.
But we've done that, Dr. Hyde. We went into executive session 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks
So,
ago.
Okay, so why on the agenda does it say there will be an executive session following the meeting if necessary?
If necessary.
No, either we have a purpose and we know what it is beforehand, or we don't need to put that in there.
Well, that's your opinion. That's your
Well,
opinion, and I
okay, then I'd
appreciate
like to
it.
bring it to a vote.
Oh, sure.
Point of order.
We're not even
I
voting.
thought we were here to discuss the agenda and go over it. If you have discussion, I suggest that you bring it up afterwards.
Well,
Because some of these people have to go and they don't have to sit here.
the board,
I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. Are we not here to discuss the agenda for next week?
and the agenda's missing a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, then you bring that after the words. How do we know?
After,
it's
I
missing?
brought it after other meetings, and it doesn't, it never comes up.
Well, then
Excuse
you
me.
asked for a study session.
I have.
Well, then I haven't heard it, and then we could set up a study session, we can go over it. But I thought the purpose of here is, I don't want to be here till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock tonight, going over this stuff when it's a small, short agenda, and we're not even on the agenda yet.
There- Sir, I'm just saying, I have a laundry list. I mean, I have a
Well,
list of
that's
probably
fine. I
15 or 20
understand that.
things that I think are important to the operation of Adams
Well,
14
then
and
ask
the
for a
board.
study session where we can discuss it.
Mr. Rolla, I have.
But it has to be voted on by 3 people.
Have you
How?
demanded? Demand it then.
I'm
This way we have to
demanding it
vote on
right now. I don't know
So-
how to be more emphatic than I am
Then
now.
ask for a study session so we can discuss the points you have brought up then.
That's why we
Right
have,
now,
I
just
have.
ask for it.
Sir, that's my whole point. I've been doing this for weeks, for months, and I'm getting nowhere.
Well, I think you got answer to 2 of your questions that you say were neglected. They're on there.
Okay, I read through it, and I couldn't recognize it as my item. Could you tell me what the two are?
So you said, the literacy program, no, let's see, you said, a March 1st full briefing of the board with OCR. That doesn't happen in here, that happens with OCR in there, which we're gonna request that, okay?
Okay.
With Virginia.
If you had just simply
Hang
emailed me
on,
back
hang
saying
on.
it's,
19th, operation of the board, that was already taken care of. Randy Black's gonna be here on Wednesday, or Monday, to meet, or Tuesday, to meet with us prior to the meeting on full operations of the board.
okay, because it seemed to me.
It's in
it
here.
was- Okay, it didn't say the full it said, the wording did not indicate that we were going to look at evaluative instruments for ourselves or for the superintendent. That was not in the wording. So I did not associate that statement with my agenda item,
Okay.
okay? And if I never received anything back from either the secretary or from the chair saying that we're gonna be taking this up. So I come in here blind, not knowing what you just told me. So, I mean, that's reassuring that you're telling me this now, but it's at this instant rather than any time in the last month.
Well, you continue to say that I don't address your items, Bill. I've met with you numerous times over things, and they've always made the agenda if they were necessary for the agenda. We've gone over them and talked about them, because you want to have a meeting with me one-on-one, so we meet one-on-one. So they make it to the agenda if they're agenda items, or they make it to executive session when we have executive session. But I agree with Mr. Rolla. We can have this conversation in the back, when we're in executive session with the attorney. He can tell us exactly what we can do legally, for this agenda, if we decide to change it. But these folks here are here for a specific reason tonight, to go over this agenda items that are gonna come in on Tuesday. So if you wanna, I get it that you're gonna object to the approval of the agenda. I'm not talking about that. We don't have to approve it right now. It's just the wording that's on there.
Okay, and
So-
I was trying to see if the board could amend the agenda for Tuesday, so that on Tuesday, I don't have to object.
This is a draft agenda. This is
Okay.
a draft agenda to go over the agenda to see if it's gonna make it to the Tuesday meeting or not.
Okay.
That's the purpose of this meeting. That's why we had this meeting.
Okay.
There's an item on here that's gonna be pulled off, tonight because it's not ready. It's 1.11. It was on there, but it's gonna be pulled off tonight during this session right now.
So can we put other things on?
Sure.
Okay, great, that'd be terrific.
I don't know
At
what they're
point
gonna
in
be,
time
but
do you-
we'll figure that out
All
as
right,
we're going, all
okay,
right?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, so back to the study session.
Let's go do.
Under business, you've got your a draft agenda. You should have got it already. It's personnel. Does anybody have any objections with any of the personnel? You want to pull them out? You want to leave them on there? What do you want to do?
We have to step out of that clock a little bit because I'm gonna agree to the recess committee upstairs.
Connie, you okay with them?
I'm fine.
Dave, you okay with them?
Yeah.
Harvest?
Yeah.
Dr. Hyde?
Yes.
All right. Let's move to 1.2, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to accept the funds from the Quality Community Foundation. Anybody have any discussion about that or any questions about that? Good. 1.3, Superintendent's recommendation, Resolution 1803, approving intergovernmental agreement for education access programming with the City of Commerce City. I make a recommendation that we put that into executive session. We have two IGAs in here tonight to have discussion with, so I'm recommending to the board that we talk about them in executive session. If you have any questions about them, you can get explanation about what they are. The other one is the URA agreement. That's my recommendation to you, unless you want to talk about them now. They're awful large agreements.
Mr. President?
Yes.
And both of those I have reviewed both of the agreements, so it'd be appropriate to do that.
Okay. So is that okay with everybody? We'll talk about them in executive session.
I'm fine.
Mr. Rolla?
Yeah.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Hyde?
Yes.
President Archuleta?
Yes.
I just wanted to point out that Ms. Halsted is here from the City of Commerce City to answer any questions anyone may have.
Okay.
She's right
I'm sorry.
So,
No, you're fine.
I'm sorry, but that you're for the URA or for both of them?
Oh, not the URA, sir.
For
I could do my
this one.
best, but for the education access agreement. If you had any questions, the city, I'm happy to stay through the rest of it.
Has everybody read that? Have you read that?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is an excellent opportunity, since she's here, if she would be willing to give us a summary of what, I'm not an expert on this stuff, and my eyes kind of glazed over looking at those 70 pages or whatever it was. And I really would appreciate, and I realize that we may need to talk about in an executive session as well, but I would benefit tremendously by having an overview, short overview of just, in your own words, of what it does, whether we've done this in the past, how is it different, and so forth.
Sure.
Does that seem appropriate, Mr. Chairman?
Fine, yes. That's what we're here for.
Well, good evening, members of the board. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to Ms. Asmus and Dr. Abrego for giving us this opportunity. So a little bit of background. Channel 8 is actually something that's provided by the federal government. It's a programming category. It's government access television. It also is under public and educational access television. So this is something that the federal government requires cable companies to provide, and that occurs through what is called a franchise agreement. And so that's an agreement between the city and the cable company that provides us access to one channel, or in our case, 2 channels. So that is what Channel 8, Channel 22, that's what that is. The Exhibit B, which your attorney will share with you, is a copy of our franchise agreement. So we wanted to be transparent and make sure that the district fully had the entire franchise agreement. So that's Exhibit B of that really long document, which are the standards that we are held to. In terms of operating, it identifies the rules of the road for how we interact with Comcast, not just on providing this type of programming, but also how they work with us in terms of right-of-way and general subscribers. So that's a little bit of background on Comcast Channel 8. We've had the franchise since 1995. So the city has had a franchise agreement with Comcast since 1995. We updated that agreement in 2013, and that's when we received 2 channels, 2 standard definition channels, Channel 8 and Channel 22. And for those of you who have been part of the joint meetings between City Council and the board, we've talked a little bit about this. We actually did have a IGA back in 2000. Prior to my tenure with the city and Ms. Asmus's with the district, the city and the school district came up with an agreement following that 1995 franchise that was pretty directive, really requiring the school district to provide us with quite a bit of access to your personnel, to your services, because we did not have the ability, and we were not, quite frankly, doing government access programming. The agreement and various elements of the agreement have not always been implemented on either side. And one of the things that we recognized when I came here, and as did Ms. Asmus, is that we had to update this agreement because we needed it to better reflect the operating environment we both currently had, and we had to address the needs and desires of, I think, our community to increase the level of programming. So the agreement in front of you, and I would really focus on the first part, the intergovernmental agreement, everything Exhibit A to the front. It really outlines how we will operate our government access programming moving forward under a new agreement. We're proposing, and we've talked a little bit about this in these joint meetings, to operate the 2 channels and really maximize the franchise that we have with Comcast. We're proposing that Channel 8 would be government programming, and Channel 22 would be educational programming, and that we would provide the district the entire channel. So right now, we've really relied on the district to kind of share programming and publish our programs, which creates a strain, and now this would provide the district with a channel purely for educational programming. That does require that the district meet the terms of our franchise agreement when it comes to the amount of original content and how many hours of programming that has to occur, and it has to make sure that the technology reflects current standards so we can make sure that we're meeting the terms of that agreement. in an effort, recognizing that both parties have made some investments in this technology, the city has negotiated with Janelle and the district to ensure that we are sharing the burden of those costs. The city council approved this IGA on Monday, which would provide the district with a one-time technology investment of up to $50,000 to address some of the aging equipment needs, which is not different from what the city did back in 2010 when we started broadcasting our meetings live. And then we would also take a portion of our subscriber funds that we receive every year as part of our franchise, and we would pay the district every year, starting at $5,000 and maxing out at $10,000, which represents about a third of our franchise funds, to ensure that your capital equipment and investments could be maintained, again, to make sure that the franchise remains. So those are probably the two biggest elements of the agreement as we see it. And I'd be happy to defer to Janelle or your attorney and answer any questions. But in our mind, it's a way for us to meet our council's desire to increase the level of government programming and make sure that we're respecting the staffing constraints and the budget constraints we both have, while also making sure that the important programming that you all provide really is augmented, and you have your own channel. So we're proposing to implement this this summer, which gives us ample opportunity to promote and educate folks about what the changes are. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry if that was a little long.
Now, does this, you said it was, excuse me, it's a 5-year contract, right? And it escalates $1,000 each year. It starts with 5 and then goes 6 and so forth.
The
And
IGA, oh, I'm sorry, Dr.
And that's,
Hyde.
so that's a 5-year contract, and you're saying, you referred to the updated in 2013, which was 5 years ago. So is this the logical next routine update?
That's a great question, Dr. Hyde. Our franchise is actually a 10-year franchise. So our franchise agreement with Comcast is for 10 years. So we approved our new one in 2013. And so our Comcast franchise expires in 2023. What we're proposing with our intergovernmental agreement with the district is that it would renew on an annual basis unless for some reason we decided to sever. By then we'd have 3 months essentially to provide that notification. But we're expecting the escalation to go 5 years because we likely will renegotiate our franchise agreement in 2023, and that will then give us a better sense from a district operating the channel that we designate, us operating the channel we designate, and then do we expand to HD, and what does that look like? And so it gives us a chance to kind of test maximizing the franchise agreement, and then what changes do we need to negotiate to make sure that everybody is satisfied. So yes.
Okay, so it seems, if I understand this right, the IGA is between Comcast and Commerce City.
No, sir. The IGA would be between Commerce City and the school district. The franchise is between the city and
okay.
Comcast, but as a designated operator of a channel, you are, we would hold you accountable for ensuring that the elements of the franchise were met on your channel.
Okay. Does Commerce City have other relationships, for example, with Parks and Rec? Any other school districts involved, or any other educational establishments that might, that are in it or might want to be in it?
At this point, we do not. What we would propose is, as the designated educational access provider, that you would be running the educational channel. If you wanted to work with 27J or other schools to share educational content, that would certainly be your purview. And the IGA, I don't recall what page, but the IGA between us and this and you all talk about how you could do programming and secure that content. But right now, we don't have anyone else who has interest in sharing that educational operation.
That answer your question?
Yes, it does. Mr. Chairman, do we have anybody from the district that could give us their side of this same issue?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and thank you, Michelle. We always bill ourselves as the Michelle and Janelle Show. And she hit on all the important parts of it. I know that we have appreciated the cooperation and collaboration that we've had with the city. We've approached problem solving together, and we've been able to work out issues that we've had, and we look forward to doing that with this increased opportunity for us. We have really, I think, maximized an opportunity for the district with certainly the franchise fee and the escalation that we have, but certainly operating a channel of our own, because we know that we have enough programming that there's demand for people wanting more information, not less, about our school district and what we do, that we know that we can benefit from having our own channel. Now, that being said, I should also say that we did not increase personnel for this. So we still have the same personnel, and I'll count them. One. We have one person, and that's Cameron Weiss, who is wonderful and has won many statewide awards for his work. But we didn't increase the number of hours in the day either. So, but we're ready to take on that challenge, and we're eager to showcase what the district has.
Thank you.
Is there anything in the agreement that you would like to change?
At the point that this is right now, no, not at all. Like I said, we've worked hand in hand with Michelle and the city staff, our attorneys, the city's attorneys, to make sure that everything is up to speed. And we always kind of approach things in a collegial, kind of a fluid fashion, that if something's not working, we take it upon ourselves to make it work. And then when we have an opportunity to make it official, we do that.
So at the operational level, you're entirely satisfied with the proposal?
With the proposal, yes, sir.
Anybody else? Thank you, Janelle.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Michelle.
We'll have further discussion with that in executive session, and our attorney can tell us the good and bad points about the agreement. Moving on to 1.4, Superintendent's recommendation, approval to purchase HP Chromebooks and cards to support beyond textbooks. Anybody have any questions for Brian? Brandon, excuse me. Excuse me, Brandon.
I'm good. Brian knows what he's talking about.
Brandon. So my understanding is these are the 11, the ones that are coming to the high school?
Actually, so in anticipation of having a couple questions, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring up some paperwork.
Do you see the age of us up here?
I didn't bring magnifying glasses. I'm very sorry.
I'm just teasing you. Oh, no, I'm not.
Brian.
So the spreadsheet that I put in front of you right now, the last time we requested Chromebooks, Mr. Thomas had some questions about where these were going to go. It wasn't included on the SUPS rec this time around. But what we're looking at this time is phase 2. So that will provide additional Chromebooks for ACHS, ALSUP, believe, again, this is really small, KMS and KEMP. Provide some additional spares for when we need to reallocate equipment, broken items, that kind of thing. And so, yes, this time around, the purchase total is 1,142 devices. We've already purchased 1,089. And I'm not too good at math, I'm not going to do it in public, but it looks like we've got a little bit less than, say, about 100, 150 that still need to be deployed from that batch. Once that batch is completed, this will basically time to those being put out and these new ones coming in. That way we don't overwhelm the amount of space that we have in the basement as well as the warehouse, because they generally get kind of angry at us when we drop off 40 new carts. So
So this is including cards, correct?
Yeah, there's, I believe, 38 carts on this purchase, along with the Chromebooks.
Okay.
Do you essentially need one cart per classroom?
36 per,
36 stations?
Chromebooks per cart, but not every classroom has 36 students in it. So we kind of play this balancing act of, they only need 25 in this one, they need the full 36 in this one. So there's some excess carts. We're actually going to use the excess carts to remove some older carts that are out in the buildings. You know, some of them are just starting to fall apart. It was a really good opportunity to say, hey, we don't need 20 carts at ACHS. We can use a couple extra at maybe Alsop or something like that.
Can one cart serve 2 classrooms?
Depend upon the classroom.
I mean, if it's less than 36?
Yeah, I mean, we're leaving that basically up at the school. So what we're doing is we're taking the student count that's currently active in the building, determining how many Chromebooks they need based upon what's there, and those numbers are kind of laid out for you in that spreadsheet. You know, and then really, once we've determined those numbers, we drop them off at the school, and it's up to the school to determine the best use. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon Ryan.